Ever wondered what's lurking down there? Beneath our feet, where the light can't reach, and the echoes of your own footsteps are swallowed by the darkness. What's really living in the basements? Yeah, those places we usually think of as just storage for old junk. But what if I told you they could be the setting for something far more sinister? Stories that'll make you rethink what your mind can conjure when fear starts creeping in. Today, you're going to hear real-life stories of basements that became places of absolute terror. Cases that sound like something straight out of a horror movie, but they happened for real, in places you'd never imagine. I know what you're thinking. Are these stories exaggerated? The truth might be even more disturbing than you can handle. Let's dive into the unknown and get ready to hear stories that you won't ever forget. So, what's really hidden in these basements? Well, if you think you're ready to find out, come along and prepare yourself, because some of these stories are going to send chills down your spine. Let's start with the basics. What makes a basement so creepy? Sure, we all think of them as dark, cold spaces where we store old boxes and forgotten items. But what if I told you that basements have been the site of some truly disturbing events? Take, for example, the story of a family that moved into a beautiful house in the suburbs. Everything seemed perfect, except for one thing: the basement. At first, they brushed off the strange sounds coming from below, thinking it was just the house settling. But after a few weeks, those sounds grew louder and more frequent. One night, as the family was investigating the source of the noise, they made a terrifying discovery. Behind a stack of old crates, hidden in a corner of the basement, was a hidden door. A door that wasn't on the floor plan. And what they found behind it? Well, that's where things get really unsettling. They opened the door to reveal a narrow hallway leading deeper underground. And what was at the end of it? A room full of strange symbols carved into the walls. Some were familiar, some weren't. That night, the family couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching them from the shadows. They immediately contacted paranormal investigators. While some of us might think of these stories as just urban legends, the truth is, the basement became an undeniable focal point for paranormal activity. The investigators couldn't explain what they encountered, and eventually, the house was abandoned. But to this day, no one knows exactly what was lurking down there. So, what is it about basements that seems to make them such magnets for strange, unexplainable events? Is it the isolation, the darkness? Or is there something more sinister hiding beneath the surface of these seemingly ordinary spaces? Whatever it is, these kinds of discoveries are more common than you think. People have uncovered strange artifacts, hidden rooms, and even unsettling messages left behind, all in the basements of ordinary homes. But not all basement stories are just about the supernatural. Sometimes, these dark spaces are the setting for something far darker, something that can never truly be explained. Take, for example, the case of Sarah Mitchell, a young woman who disappeared without a trace over 20 years ago. She was last seen leaving a friend's house late at night, heading towards her car. But as the hours passed, her family began to grow worried when she never returned home. When police finally began their investigation, they started with Sarah's last known location, the basement of the house she had visited. No one had ever seen her leave the house. No one heard any sounds. Nothing. Just silence. The basement, which seemed to be just a storage area, became the key to the mystery. But when they searched it, they found nothing. No signs of a struggle, no clues. The case went cold. But a few months later, an unsettling discovery was made. An anonymous tip led investigators to a hidden compartment in the basement wall. Behind it, they found a series of letters, written in Sarah's handwriting, detailing strange events that had been happening in the house. She had felt watched and had started hearing strange noises coming from the basement itself. But what was most chilling was the final letter. It simply said, "I'm sorry. I don't think I can get out." The tipster also mentioned a strange figure seen leaving the basement at night, but no one was ever able to track them down. To this day, Sarah's disappearance remains unsolved, and the house where she vanished has been abandoned for years. No one dares to live there anymore. Was Sarah's disappearance simply a tragic event? Or was there something far more sinister at play in that basement? We may never know. But stories like hers are not as rare as we think. In fact, countless people have vanished from similar homes. Their disappearances tied to the very basements that were once thought to be harmless. And as we'll see, some of these mysteries may not be as cold as we believe. Now, we dive into the truly unnerving side of basements, not just the strange sounds or hidden compartments, but something far more unnatural. Stories of creatures, shadows, and encounters that go beyond our understanding. Take the case of the Thompson family. They moved into a Victorian house in the countryside, thinking it was a dream come true. But it didn't take long for things to take a terrifying turn. The family started hearing footsteps in the basement, even though no one had gone down there. And the strange thing was, these footsteps weren't the sound of someone walking. They were heavier, almost like something dragging along the floor. One night, as they were investigating the source of the sound, the youngest child, Emily, swore she saw something in the basement. She described it as a tall, thin shadow with glowing eyes that seemed to follow her. But when they went to check, the basement was empty. At first, they chalked it up to an overactive imagination, but then things got worse. More family members started reporting seeing the same figure, always in the basement, always watching. Emily refused to go near the basement after that, saying the shadow had started talking to her. Not in words, but in whispers that only she could hear. The family called in paranormal investigators, but when they arrived, the basement was eerily silent. However, one of the investigators claimed to have felt something cold brush against his leg as he walked through the basement. He later reported hearing a faint voice saying, "Get out before it's too late." Despite all the evidence of something unexplainable, no one was able to figure out what was truly happening in that basement. Was it a spirit trying to communicate, or something far worse? Something that had lived there long before the Thompsons moved in. Perhaps the most disturbing part of this story is that after the Thompsons moved out, the new homeowners reported similar experiences. The basement, it seemed, was cursed, or worse, inhabited by something ancient that refused to leave. And the thing is, stories like these aren't isolated. Over the years, countless others have reported seeing shadows, hearing voices, or even encountering strange creatures in the basements of old houses. So, what are we really dealing with here? Are these just vivid hallucinations brought on by fear and isolation? Or is there something truly supernatural living in the dark corners of basements, waiting for the next person to wander too close? Now, I know what you're probably thinking. These stories are seriously creepy, but do they have a rational explanation? Some would say it's all just coincidence, that the human mind is capable of creating terrifying stories, especially when we're alone in the dark. But what if there's more to it than just our imagination? Let's take a moment and think about this. How many people really know what's lurking in the basements of their homes? And how many others simply ignore the signs until it's too late? Because, honestly, sometimes fear doesn't come from what you see, but from what you can't understand. And the scariest part? The stories you've just heard might be only the tip of the iceberg. If you still think all of this is just fiction, maybe it's time to reconsider what might really be hiding down there, waiting to be discovered, or maybe even to find you. Now, let's take a closer look at what we've uncovered. All these stories, these creepy encounters, could they really just be coincidence? Or is there something much darker hiding in the shadows of those basements? People have felt the presence of something watching them, lurking just beyond sight, deep in the corners of their basements. Some of them even say they've seen eyes staring back at them from the dark. And yet, every time they gather the courage to face it, to investigate the source of the noise, the feeling of dread only grows stronger. The closer they get to the basement, the more real the terror becomes. But it's not just the sounds or the shadows. Some have reported feeling a coldness that chills them to their core, even before they enter the basement. A sense that something is waiting, just out of view. And once they step inside, it's like the very air shifts, becoming heavier, suffocating. Others have described the air in these basements as thick, almost as if it's filled with something intangible, like a presence that's been there long before anyone ever set foot in the house. Some of these basements have become places where no one dares to go anymore, where even the bravest souls have turned back, unable to shake the overwhelming feeling that something not human, might be waiting for them. Could there be creatures hiding in the dark, waiting for their next victim? Or are these experiences something else entirely? What if there's a truth to all these stories that we're simply not ready to face? After everything we've uncovered today, one thing is clear. Basements aren't just forgotten storage spaces or places we hide our junk. They are something far more disturbing. From the strange symbols to the whispers to the terrifying encounters, it seems there's something that connects all of these chilling stories. Something ancient, lurking beneath our feet, just waiting for the right moment to make its presence known. What if these stories aren't just myths? What if the terror in the basements isn't something we've imagined, but something that's been hiding in the shadows all along? Some say that the more we ignore these warnings, the more we invite the darkness into our lives. And while many of these basements may seem like nothing more than old, dusty rooms, the truth is, we may never truly know what lies beneath the surface. Maybe it's better that way. Maybe some mysteries are meant to stay hidden. Because once you open that door, once you step into the dark, there's no turning back. So, the next time you hear a creak from your own basement, or feel an inexplicable chill in the air, just remember, you're not the first to feel it, and you won't be the last. Because some basements are not just places we store things. They're places where fear is buried and waiting to rise again. Well, that was a chilling ride, wasn't it? I hope you enjoyed exploring the eerie world of basements with us. If you did, don't forget to hit that like button, because trust me, you won't want to miss what we have coming next. And if you haven't already, make sure to subscribe to the channel and turn on the notifications. That way, you'll be the first to know whenever we uncover more spine-tingling stories. Thanks for watching. And remember, next time you head down into your basement, take a second look. You never know what's waiting for you in the dark. Until next time, stay curious, stay safe, and most importantly, stay brave.